any ecosystem will have a variety of food chains. Wherein one given plant can become linked to several primary consumers and so on. So most of them may be herbivorous food chains. Some of them may be detritivorous, and some of them may be parasitic. All the three types of food chains may be present in a given ecosystem. Therefore, it is possible that the different types of food chains in a given ecosystem, become interconnected, because any one given plant or any one given animal can be a part of several food chains. The different types of food chains become interconnected, thereby establishing a complex interrelationship. So such a situation where food chains become interconnected, establishing a complex interrelationship, is what is known as a food web. So a food web is a complex interrelationship that is established between the various food chains in an ecosystem becoming interconnected. Let us take an illustration to see how a food web can be formed. For example, let us say there is an ecosystem having 3 food chains. Let us call them as food chain 1, food chain 2 and food chain 3. In each of these food chains there is a producer, a primary consumer, a secondary consumer and a tertiary consumer. So it is assuming that all these 3 food chains are typical food chains having 4 trophic levels: producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer and tertiary consumer. For the first food chain, there is a plant. Feeding on this plant is a let us say herbivorous animal, a primary consumer. Feeding on this primary consumer is a secondary consumer, and feeding on this secondary consumer is a tertiary consumer. So this is a food chain. This is a food chain: primary producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Let us say the second food chain has another species of a plant, another species of a plant, another species of a primary consumer, another secondary consumer, and another tertiary consumer. So this forms a second food chain. In the same way, third food chain has a plant, has a primary consumer, a secondary consumer, different from these two, and a tertiary consumer, different from these two. So this becomes food chain 3. So we have started with 3 food chains. In a situation like this, there is no hard and fast rule that this plant should be eaten only by this primary consumer. It can be a food for this primary consumer, or it can be a food for this primary consumer. In the same way, this plant can be eaten by this animal or this animal. Same thing holds good for plant number 3. It can be a food for this, it can be a food for this. So we started with 3 food chains. Now we have added 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now there are 9 food chains here. Same thing can happen to this primary consumers also. This primary consumer need not be always eaten by this animal. It can be a food for this, or it can be a food for this. This primary consumer can be a food for this, or it can be a food for this. This primary consumer can be a food for this or this animal. Same idea holds good at the level of secondary consumer also. This animal can be eaten by this animal or this animal also. This can be eaten by this animal or this animal also. This can be eaten by this animal or this animal also. So you can see how food chains are getting interconnected, forming a complex interrelationship. This kind of interrelationship that is established is known as a food web. Now, we started with 3 food chains. How many food chains are there? You may start counting. You will be surprised to know that here there are a total of 729 food chains. 729 food chains. 9 into 9 into 9, 729 food chains, with just 3 examples at each trophic level. So this is how in an ecosystem food chains become interlinked with one another, establishing food webs.